When is it a good time to sell your altcoins and get out of the market for good? What are those indicators that signal to us the market's overheated? If you stay in, you better be pretty careful, okay? Now, I'm not talking about looking and analyzing each of your altcoins. You should already do this. I've spoken about this many times before. Don't rely on macro indicators to say, hey, now's a good time to just mass sell your altcoins, because these things move independently from one another. But of course, you should have all this planned already and know how this works. If you don't, make sure you're subscribed, because not only do I talk about that, but I actually have a calculator in the private community available for anyone. You pretty much click a price prediction for one of these coins and the rest works it out for you, right? Making sure we sell in the green zone, safety. But this video is going to be covering those sort of events, those macro indicators that signal to us things historically from this point have only gone down or about to go down, okay? A lot of influencers will go out there and say, well, if Bitcoin goes to 125K or 150K, I'm selling everything. That's a dangerous way to look at it, because that's a price prediction. Imagine on one of your altcoins right now, you heard an influencer tell you, hey, if HBAR goes to $1.15, I'm selling all my altcoins. That's weighing everything on a single price, which doesn't make any sense to do. If you did that in the last cycle, you'd be waiting for 100K and would have never sold. These indicators, mark my words, I've spent time researching. You may see some of the old ones pop in here, but there are some new ones I believe are clear signals. If multiple of these, if not worst case, all of them, because that's a clear signal to me, indicate we're overheated, it's time to get out. And don't worry, subscribe, guys. I'll cover these on the channel. When these begin ticking, I will definitely make a video on, hey, I think the market might look a little overheated. Let's maybe look to de-risk if we haven't already hit our price predictions for our altcoins. And before we get into it, guys, two very important things. First one is, do not forget we are still doing a giveaway in the private community. 2 people will win $10,000 each, so $20,000 giveaway. Make sure you go ahead and join that down below, and the rules and regulations will, of course, be in the private community for that as well. And of course, our Coin W giveaway contest here, win a share of $10,000 and 5,000 PYTH, has about 16 days remaining. So make sure you get in there, because it's going to be given to the first come, first serve, and whoever does the most volume. So get in there and be trading, guys. I'm telling you right now. So let's look at some of these indicators. Now, these indicators can be a little bit overwhelming to a beginner. So again, I want to just reiterate here, if you are a beginner, if you don't know what any of these sort of things mean, or really, you know, this is one single video in the whole of YouTube, right? Crypto YouTube is very expansive. You're thinking to yourself, what's the real weight behind one of these charts? Subscribe, because if you can analyze multiple of these, tends to paint a pretty detailed picture of where we currently are in the market. Now, the first one here is the Sharpe ratio. To keep things basic, all we have to know is this is how, you know, these large institutions have historically been able to analyze a market or a particular project, deeming it a good investment based on risk. Very important, risk. What's the upside potential here versus the downside? If I buy now when it's like really overheated, obviously you're playing a much more risky game versus buying when the asset is quite low and no one's really buying it, of course, deeming it a good asset to begin with. And of course, we all think Bitcoin's a pretty good asset. So in this case, this is the Sharpe ratio for Bitcoin. And you can see here, you can't quite see, I do apologize, it's quite small, I can't make it any bigger. But the Sharpe ratio right now is underneath the red zone. We're in the yellow zone, we're a high yellow zone, if you will. Of course, when this falls into the green zone or the dark blue zone, it's of course a fantastic time to buy. Again, we can literally cross-reference pretty much all of these indicators today and use it to indicate when's a good time to get back in the next bear market, which I will be doing again. But actually, you might think to yourself, well, Klein, this is very close to the red zone. It's very close to being not a favorable risk investment. But guys, I want to point out that we've been here before, right? So the same point in time, back over here when the Sharpe ratio was about, let's just say 39 or 38, basically it was back over here as well, right? So we've been here many times before. And the Sharpe ratio here is about, what's this, between 25 to 31. But we've been here before, guys, right? If we come back over here, right, 28 to 30, way back when Bitcoin's price was at $600 before the 2018 cycle, we're up to 13K. And again, pretty much the same sort of story back over here, okay, in the previous cycle. So it's very common for us to sit like just beneath this red line, but notably, again, where we begin looking at this as a potential risk out, right, to get out of the market, if you will, is when this really peaks into the high red. This actually is kind of common to sit pretty much around here in the 60s, right? The 60 last few cycles, 50, 60s. So in my opinion, this is a good indicator of both when it's a good time to buy and, of course, the market being a risky investment, right? So again, this is telling us it is based on risk. It's not a good investment for the risk and reward. Gentleman over here, William F. Sharp, created this, hence, of course, the R minus R and all the rest of it. I'm not getting into the math because, honestly, I don't understand it myself. Now, let's look at the very important chart you've probably seen time and time again here. This is the HODL waves chart. So this pretty much pairs up the short-term Bitcoin holders and the long-term Bitcoin holders. Now, interestingly enough, you'll see here the short-term holders are in this reddy, dark colors. Basically, when the really short-term holders begin buying Bitcoin, the long-term holders begin selling Bitcoin. And the long-term holders are in these greenish, like lightish yellow colors here. The darker it gets, the longer the term the holder is, okay? Now, it's actually interesting because literally at the exact peaks, these peak. These peak for the short-term holders, okay? The long-term holders pretty much go non-existent, okay? So we can pretty much use this as a good indicator to gauge not only sentiment, but also, again, the top from coming. Because, again, sentiment will actually change like it has recently here, to go from, okay, now, these short-term holders are buying up. This looks possibly like, again, a spike here, possibly overheated, which it had been, right? We ended up having a sell for the last few months. And, when this begins changing duration again, when these whales begin buying more and more and more, and these short-term holders begin selling, which they have been recently here, again, I apologize for the size of the chart, that's a very good indicator to us that there is probably more bullishness to still come, okay? At least you'd like to hope so. In a bull market, again, one of many indicators we're looking at here, okay? Sort of the same respects, we can have a look at the short-term holders and long-term holders as a percentage as well. And if you actually pair these two up together, we can see there's actually a trend growing here. So we actually see there's a downtrend happening. There's lower highs being put in for the short-term holders, and the long-term holders are creating higher lows. So it's very interesting to see all this sort of play out. And again, this is all based on percentages here. This is probably a better chart on the right-hand side without these sort of trend lines. But again, this just indicates to me that actually over time, we are seeing more people stack Bitcoin, stack and stack and stack, rather than the short-term holders sort of moving in and out. Now, this makes sense, right? Because as someone who is in Bitcoin for a while, as a long-term sort of investor, you're going to have an account likely where you can maybe trade a little bit, right? Back and forth. But a lot of people do like to have a sort of supply in which they hold for a long period of time. So I think over time, of course, we're going to have much more long-term holders, hence the higher lows rather than the lower highs. Essentially, it's kind of how I look at it, right? Very, very good thing indeed. And one of my favorite indicators overall, okay, this is one I really will be using quite extensively, is the MVRV Z score. I know, what a mouthful. So what this chart essentially says is it's taking the market value, which is pretty much the market cap of Bitcoin. So it takes the last traded price of the average of all the markets. So currently Bitcoin's trading at let's say $60,000, multiplies by the existing supply, it gives you the market cap. So obviously the black line here tracks the market cap. The blue line underneath the market cap is not a moving average. It's actually taking the realized market cap value. So it takes pretty much the last time a single Bitcoin moved to the last price where it moved from, which usually was when it was pretty much bought. So it takes it all the way back to when Bitcoin was at 1 cent, and then works at the market cap from each of those individual levels, and then it divides it by the current supply as well. So it comes out to this weird smaller number, but it's realized. It's the true value essentially in the Bitcoin network, not the superficial market cap that it currently is now. Essentially, it's kind of how it works, right? So we can see here, of course, a good time to buy is always when these two touch. Always when these two touch is a good time to buy. So again, we can use this on the contrary. But this orange score is what we're really trying to use here, the Z score, if you will. It works at the standard deviation between the two, cuts out all of the noise. And essentially, when this spikes up into the red zone here, it's a very good time to get out of the market. Again, conversely, in the green zone, very good time to buy. You can see these again correlating very, very well with buys and sells. So yes, when we do tap into this red area, or at least get above 6 on the Z score over here, right? When this score hits a 6, it's probably a pretty good signal to us that things are beginning to get overheated. Now might be a good time to think about possibly getting out. Again, if all other indicators in this case, and this works for every other indicator I've so far mentioned, if every other indicator is like, hang on, things aren't as bad as what it seems essentially, right? The diagnosis, well, then we can continue sort of, holding our tokens. Now, this is why it's very important to look at individual sell levels for each of the coins before you even look at this and follow the channel and keep up to date with this sort of stuff, because, narratives move differently, right? So you might have Bitcoin go up and then you have gaming coins not really do very well. This is what happened in the last cycle. And then all of a sudden you panic sell your gaming coins. All your other coins have made you money so far, okay, but your gaming coins haven't. And then you panic sell. And what happens? Well, your gaming coins end up popping off a couple months after Bitcoin has its all-time high and the whole market's pulling down. It's very interesting and weird. So again, you want to make sure that you're kind of assessing this in the real moments. But again, these are very, very useful, as you could obviously tell by now. Another indicator here is this chart. So it's the Bitcoin bull bear cycle indicator. This one here is more of like a lagging indicator, if you will. So not something I would really want to look at necessarily in the moment, but it definitely will give more perspective. Okay, so in this case, when this chart here does begin to scream overheated bull, you can see over here this dark reddish color. That might be a good signal to us that, hey, if these pretty much signaling overheated bull for a period of time, again, maybe this is kind of like a month in, okay, maybe things are beginning to look like they're going to top out. But this isn't amazingly accurate in my personal opinion, because of over-analyzing this chart, of course, I begin looking, okay, most of the time at these all-time highs, we're not in an overheated bull. We're actually just in a regular bull, which is completely normal. We're in a regular bull right now, okay? So it's very hard to distinguish based on this chart alone, whether it is a good time to actually begin selling, all right? Now, this, I think, is a very good indicator for buying. Yes, buying this has been pretty effective, but in the bull sense, not necessarily. I'll still be looking at this because, again, when you're looking at indicators, you want to find ones that, again, have some value, some weight to add, possibly another perspective. If we do, for one chance, and in the last few cycles here, actually begin having an overheated bull market when we're like, okay, well, prices are soaring, then, okay, just on the opposite side of things, look at a chart or an indicator and say, well, if it's been accurate 100 times, what if it's then wrong once? And the same thing in this case. What if it's not been very accurate at indicating an overheated bull market so far, but this time around it does work? So that's what I'll be using as well. I thought I would point it out, but I think even more important as well is looking at the percent of addresses for Bitcoin in profit. I don't really see many people talking about this, because usually when the bull run is like towards like the last few phases, we have most people in pretty much 100% profit. Okay, right now we're not. Right now we're at about, 85%, which seems quite high. I get it. But again, a lot of the time people are quite profitable in Bitcoin, apart from like the really dredged parts of the bear market, right? But I think towards like the last maybe 6, 7, 8 months of the bull cycle, most people, most of the time, are about 90 to 100% in profit. So we can begin seeing, you can see over here in the last few cycles, that this tends to happen towards the top. All right. So again, we can kind of use this to go, okay, most people are in profit, which means one very important thing. They feel like it's never going to end. They feel that sort of weight and go, okay, that greed is coming in. I'm just going to keep putting money into Bitcoin. Boom, 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 boom. I'm already 3x up, or I'm already 4x up. I'm just going to keep throwing money in. Okay. And that's what we want. We want this as almost like not necessarily how many people are making money per se, because it's all on paper, but use this to gauge retail's thinking. They're greedy. And people are greedy. Now, investor capitalization chart was one that I showed on a previous video, and I think this is pretty important to talk about. So this chart here takes in pretty much the realized market cap value we spoke about before, taking all the previous old coins and finding the market cap of what they were back when they were last traded, and also having a look at what's called the thermo cap, basically taking in miner profit, essentially, right? And this generates this sort of orangey line. And every single time we've touched this line in the past, it's pretty much given us a good indication to get out, right? To sell. So it actually happened over here again recently, and we actually touched, and then we've kind of separated once again. Now, without going into a huge amount of detail, I'm not going to use this as a primary indicator, more so as a complementary indicator. When this does touch, we typically go down. Happened again recently. If we go back to 2021, happened over here. Okay, in this first part, we came down and we, by miracle, came back up again and touched, and then we came back down again. So as long as we kind of have this disparity between the two and we pretty much are trading beneath this line, or at least if we do touch it, we come back down within reason and we kind of stay within sort of equal partition between the price of Bitcoin and the line, I think we do still have a good chance to go up in price rather than coming down. But mark my words, I'll be a little bit skittish when these two things touch, given some of these other indicators also hit as well. Now, speaking roughly about miners, it's very important to analyze what these guys are doing, because if miners aren't profitable, it means they are likely to sell, okay, to capitulate. And if all these miners begin capitulating, what happens is a lot of Bitcoin gets sold on the open market, which does tank the price. Price tanks, articles come out, FUD, people start panic selling. It's just how things perpetuate in this cycle, okay? And we can see here, this is a pretty decent idea of the miner profit loss, okay? So pretty much at the time of the bull markets, right, the really all-time highs, if you will, we pretty much have miners extremely overpaid. And they're not overpaid for that long, a few months, maybe 3-4 months at max. So they get really profitable for a period of time, and then they might take some profits, for example. Or, again, the market begins to come down and these guys panic sell. I mean, anything could be possible here. We can overanalyze this to the moon and back, essentially. But it is important to note that in the most heated parts of the cycle, these highs, these guys begin selling. As well, we also have the minor capitulation charts, which is a very important thing to look at. I don't see many people talking about this anymore. Basically, towards the end of the cycle, right when the red comes around, which again is pretty much just the last few months of the bull run before the next halving. When we halve, of course, it goes blue. We typically have these guys capitulate. That's why it's called the minor capitulation chart. Okay, they begin selling because it becomes either unaffordable, they're making some profits because these guys get paid in Bitcoin. They're going to want to put unless they're holding for the long term, they're going to want to actually realize some of these gains, and that's where things can eventually taper off. Lastly, I do want to point out this is kind of a sell indicator as well, but I've spoken about this fair bit, the Altcoin Buy Signal. So right now we're pretty much at lows altcoins have never seen before in terms of a good time to buy. Green, I can't remember where the thing is right here. Sell your house. So green equals sell your house and buy altcoins, essentially. Now, when Bitcoin comes to these levels as well, in this case, you'd be selling your house, buying Bitcoin. Again, that's reading off the chart here, not financial advice. I do have to preface, right? But needless to say, again, this can be used when selling as well, right? So when it's at the red line, which Bitcoin has been recently, you can see every time it's touched this red line, Bitcoin's come back down again. I mean, it's a pretty decent indicator if you ask me, and there's reasons behind it. I actually created my very own indicator like this before I found this. And then I found this and I was like, well, great, someone else has thought of it, packaged it much more nicely. I'll just use this. Okay, so it takes the different market caps and kind of compares them. So it takes total 3 and also takes the Bitcoin market cap and a few other things as well into consideration. So guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Again, I know it's kind of confusing and it can be overwhelming sometimes, like which one weighs more important than the next. There are a few in here that I would definitely look at first, okay? And then the others can complement those. But again, I'll be doing that all for you on the channel anyway. So make sure you are subscribed and, of course, make sure you have the bell on because these things will be timely when everyone's trying to sell or when there's mass greed. I can damn well bet my bottom dollar right now you'll see a million videos out there saying, Bitcoin's going up to 300 or 400K now. And then you'll see Mr. No BS Crypto over here saying, get out. Okay, so I'll keep it real with you guys. All right, take good care. Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.